How do you think you were influenced by your early roles at the minor league clubs?
Well, Gastonia, which was a college summer baseball team, one of the lowest levels of baseball there was. I spent 10 plus years learning there. Where people don't even realize, like overnight success, the Bananas, like I spent 10 years where I think we had one media story in 10 years.
And it was, I mean, to be blunt, it was kind of a little club when you came in, right? I mean, it was like, it wasn't like you were going to the Yankees of minor league baseball. Yeah.
I mean, the only way you get a job at 23 years old as the GM is it has to be one of the worst teams in the entire country. And so I became the GM at 23. There was literally 200 fans coming to the games, max. $268 in the bank account my first day, and the team had lost $150,000 the previous year. They hadn't even brought in that much revenue, to give you a perspective of how tough that team was. But it was the perfect place to learn. And
how so?
I had nothing to lose. You can only go up. You don't want to take over something when it's at the highest. You want to take over something where it's at its lowest and then be able to learn and grow. And so I was able to try everything. And because I wasn't able to pay myself for 3 months, 4 months, I remember I started in September of '07. I think it was the middle or end of December, I took my first paycheck. That's how tough it was. We had 2 other full-time employees, and we had to figure out how to get people excited about coming to a low-level baseball team. And that's where I realized that I had to do something else, and I had to get a new form of education. And
Which was what?
P.T. Barnum, Walt Disney, Cirque du Soleil, WWE, Grateful Dead, everybody in the entertainment business. It was then I realized that baseball, we could never win on baseball because we were never going to be the best baseball team. You got the Yankees, the Red Sox, you got Major League, you got AAA, AA, Single A, you got pro ball all over the country. We're college summer baseball. You can't sell baseball. You got to sell something different. And so I learned that from P.T. Barnum and Walt and all that. I said, all right, if we were going to go into the baseball business, could we Disneyfy it? Could we make it special and magical in it? So I was like, all right, well, let's start reading more because I need to educate myself on Walt. And then I thought about P.T. Barnum because running a circus and bringing people together to see something different, I was like, all right, well, how could we think of it from there? And so I just started reading those books immediately and thinking, what are the wild, crazy ideas that we can do to get people to realize this isn't just low-level baseball, there's something else here.
Mm-hmm. And what were the early things you took from that education that you started immediately applying?
Well, P.T. Barnum was all about attention. I learned right away attention beats marketing 1,000% of the time.
Well, and that's what you've always said. You don't have a marketing spend, you have an attention plan.
Yes, 100%.
And that means what?
So P.T. Barnum said, without promotion, something terrible happens. Nothing. And so I realized very quickly that we had to promote in a different way and think of things that could create attention. So the first things I did never got huge attention because I was learning, but it was when HGH was huge. This was back in '07, and so you had steroids and HGH. So I fired our mascot for BGH, bear growth hormone, because he was a bear. I immediately fired him. I had a picture of him walking out so I fired our mascot, which made no sense. But he's gone. I'm like, we're bringing in a new one, which ironically we brought in one that was ripped and his name was Chisel. So that's a whole nother story. But I started creating attention. And I said, all right, well, what if we bury a diamond ring in the infield dirt? Let's do that, and let's do a dig for the diamond, which has been done before, but I thought about that, and I said, well, what if we did a dig to China night? So I literally put in the infield dirt, I said, dig to China night. You're gonna get a trip to China, and had all these people digging. And this woman pulled it up and it said a one-way flight to China, no flight back and no accommodations. And so I got her to China. We eventually gave her a cruise instead. She wasn't just gonna go to China on the way. But you create attention because you create a story. And so I started creating all that. We did Flatulence Fun Night, where we literally had whoopee cushion giveaways. We had a bean burrito eating contest. We did Salute to Underwear Night, one of my first years, where we literally threw out underwear in the crowd. If people wear underwear over their pants or their shorts, they got a free giveaway. And it was the most unfamily-friendly night we've ever done. But the reality is people started saying, what are they doing over there? And it started creating a little bit of tension. I started thinking, what would PT do? That was a little wild. That doesn't make sense. What about the players dancing? And I started asking all these questions by just thinking, what are the things that you normally would see at a baseball game? And what would be the exact opposite?
Right.
And that was 10 years of trial and experimentation.
He was doing something that was attracting new demographics to ballparks at a time when people were not coming out to the ballpark unless they were diehard baseball fans. And that's not who he was attracting. He was attracting the families. He was attracting the grandparents. He was attracting the little kids. The whole community was coming out to his ballpark to see something that they hadn't seen before, to be entertained. And that's not what any of the rest of us were focusing on, even in minor league baseball, when we're kind of the joke and the fun, whereas Major League Baseball is more serious. Even when I was working in minor league baseball, we were not doing it even close to the level that he had done.
I was talking to your mentor and I guess then owner of the team, Ken, and he brought up the Midnight Madness game and the community give back night. What stands out from each of those?
Well, I said, how could we create some attention and do something that people would never do and find a new way to get fans to come to a game? And so I was thinking about, all right, games are always at 7 o'clock. What if you did a game at midnight? And I told him about it. He goes, who's going to come? I go, people will come. He goes, no one's going to come. I go, they'll come. I go, just give me this chance. And he always gave me chances. And I said, so I found a new way of getting people in. So there were some manufacturing companies in Gastonia. I went to those that had 3 shifts. And I said, hey, have you ever done anything for your second shift that gets out at 10 o'clock? They go, oh, it's really tough because they work all. I was like, I've got the perfect opportunity for you. We're having a midnight game. And so I got a company to buy 2,000 tickets for their second shift. It's already a success.
Right.
And then we said, all right, how do you make it fun for everyone else? I mean, the idea of doing last call at 2 a.m. at a baseball game is very funny. And so we just made it into a whole experience, an event. And had 3,000 or 4,000 people show up. It's huge.
And he said that was the biggest night Gastonia ever had.
Yeah.
And then the community give back night, he's like, I thought he was bat crazy when he comes to me and says he wants to give free admission and food for the first 1,000 people, right?
Yeah, it was the last game of the year, and I said, hey, we're a part of this community. Let's find a way to give back to them and give them an opportunity to it. And he goes, how's that going to work? And I go, oh, don't worry, we'll get sponsors. This is a great thing for sponsors to look good. They're going to take care of all these tickets. And I go, we're going to feed everybody. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, we're going to have the biggest night in history, and it's going to be a huge success. And I believed in it because I had sponsors that said, we'd love to do this. And if you have enough tickets out in the right places with the right people that believe in it, and so I said, it's going to be huge. And Sundays were like our worst day. Like it was 200, 300 people. And he's like, all right, I guess we got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And he tells me all the time when he pulled up and he saw me right out in front and the line that wrapped all the way around the stadium. And I had this big grin just smiling at him. He said, I'll never forget that face that you gave me. And it ended up being the biggest night we've ever had.